I never imagined the day would come when my own parents would take one glance at me and inform me that my children were not welcome in their house. But there I was, standing in my kitchen with my heart thumping in my chest, clutching my phone till my fingers went white. With Thanksgiving just a few weeks away, I mistakenly allowed myself to think, just for a brief moment, that this might be the year. We finally felt like a true family again when my mom called in an unusually light and cheery voice. Her voice seemed almost rehearsed as she added, "Honey, we need to talk about Thanksgiving." I leaned against the counter and grinned, already seeing their dining room's cozy warmth and the aroma of cinnamon, roasting turkey, and laughter. "Naturally, Mom!" What is the strategy? A pause. It was just long enough to chill me to the bone. "Well, we're doing things a little differently this year," she remarked, clearing her throat. "Dinner will be modest and only for adults. Something more intimate, you know." My stomach turned over. "So, no children at all?" One more pause. "Well, not exactly," he said somewhat reluctantly. My stomach knotted up sharply. "What are you saying?" She let out a long, languid sigh as if I were the one causing her discomfort. "Mia, we genuinely adore your children, although they can be a little vivacious. In all honesty, we think it would be preferable if you left them with a babysitter this year." The room's air seemed to be becoming thinner. I gripped the phone more tightly. I took a deep breath. "Only my children? How about Daniel's? My older brother, Daniel, the child with the golden hue. Even when he did, he was unable to do any wrong." Mom paused, and I had my response ready for that moment. She said cautiously, as though attempting to lessen the shock, "Daniel and Claire are bringing their boys. However, Mia, you are aware of their excellent behavior. Simply put, they're quieter, more sophisticated. Having them at the table makes things easier." An intense, oppressive sense of anger swept over me. My heart thumped and my skin scorched. It seemed as if someone had hit me. "Emma is 7 years old. They're just children," I murmured, my voice shaking as I struggled to control the rage building inside of me. "Caleb is 4 years old. They have energy, of course. However, they love you and are lovely." Mom cut me off in a clipped tone, as if I were being difficult, and said, "We're just trying to have a peaceful evening. It isn't intimate, not intimate." My jaw ached from clenching so tightly. It was more than just Thanksgiving. It had to do with the way Daniel's boys were always given special treatment, while my kids were always treated like an afterthought. The manner in which they attended school functions but not Emma's dance recitals. Daniel's children always received Christmas presents that were a bit larger and more dazzling. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. "This is unbelievable," I muttered, scarcely raising my voice above a breath. "In fact, you're telling me that while Daniel's children are welcome, mine are not?" Mom let out a frustrated sigh, as though I were the one being challenging. "Oh, don't be theatrical, Mia. There will only be one dinner. Of course, Jake and you are still welcome." The ridiculousness of that nearly made me chuckle. I was supposed to be there. Not the two individuals I cared about the most, though. I inhaled deeply and slowly. "No, Mother. I'm not welcome if my children are." We were silent for a long time. Then, as if I were the letdown, she let out a sharp exhale. "Adjust yourself." She abruptly ended the call. My breath was erratic as I stood there looking at my phone. I could hear Emma and Caleb laughing from the other room as they constructed a pillow fort, totally unaware that their grandparents, whom they loved, had just thrown them out like a bother. My thoughts were racing as I took a deep breath. My entire life, I had worked to gain my parents' acceptance, making an effort to be the ideal daughter. But at what price? And what kind of mother would I be if I allowed them to get away with it, if I attended that dinner while my kids stayed at home, wondering why they weren't good enough? No, I had stopped doing this. Their decision had been made. It was my turn to make mine now. They would soon come to regret it. Long after the call was over, the impact of what my mother had said persisted. The refrigerator's soft hum filled the calm as I stood there, holding on to the edge of the kitchen counter and breathing erratically. I could still feel the heat from that last discussion like an open wound, even though my phone was on the counter with the screen dark. They no longer made an effort to conceal it. Daniel's children were adequate. Mine weren't. The living room erupted in unadulterated, unfettered laughter. I looked around. Tangled in a sea of pillows, Emma and Caleb continued to play, as if their fort were the most important thing in the world. They were utterly unaware of what had just transpired, their cheeks glowing with joy. My chest hurt. They were worthy of better. I forced a smile as I straightened my shoulders, inhaled deeply, and entered the living room. With a voice more composed than I actually felt, I asked, "Okay, you two, who's ready for movie night?" Caleb's head jerked upward. "Is it possible for us to view the talking dog?" I kissed his lovely locks as I gathered him in my arms. "We can, of course, friend." The TV's glow swept over us as we nestled up on the couch, but my rage would not go away. I had spent years trying to fit in with my parents' environment, going to great lengths to establish my worth. I had complied with their regulations, remained silent, maintained a smile despite the partiality, and persuaded myself that if I worked hard enough, they would eventually see me finally see my kids. However, it had never been sufficient, and I had given up trying. My phone buzzed on the kitchen table the following morning. I knew who it was before I even looked at it, so I picked up my coffee. "Daniel." I paused. I sighed and took it up after that. Ignoring politeness, he replied, "Mom said you're being difficult about Thanksgiving." His already agitated voice was harsh. "Why must you make things so dramatic all the time?" I gave an eye roll. "She naturally rushed to him first," I said bluntly. "She didn't invite my kids, Daniel. However, you invited yours." "Did she mention that to you?" After a little period of silence, I noticed the tight bubbles appear and then vanish. It was a full minute before he answered. "Daniel, Mia, all she wants is a quiet meal. Your children can be a lot, you know." I tightened my jaw. Too much? As if they were an inconvenience? As if they were something to be tolerated rather than cherished? With a slow exhale, I gripped my phone tighter. Daniel, have a wonderful Thanksgiving. I will not be present." Before he could reply, I switched off my phone. I wasn't wanted by them. My children weren't wanted by them. All right. I would never fit in with their world. And they were going to discover the true meaning of that. The initial cut, I had been the trustworthy one for years. Mom contacted me when she wanted someone to go get groceries. I was the one who drove over to fix Dad's Wi-Fi when it stopped functioning. I was the one who called and ran errands when they needed assistance planning a family gathering. Daniel? When it was convenient, he arrived. He was able to enjoy all the benefits of being the golden child while doing the very least. However, they would not gain anything from me either if I were no longer a member of their preferred family. A week before Thanksgiving was the first time I ever let a call go to voicemail. Dad. I let it ring while I gazed at the screen. Voicemail. Several hours later, Mom texted, "Mom, Dad needs assistance setting up his new TV, Mia. Would you be able to visit?" I didn't respond. Another one the following day. "Mom, are you able to have my medication filled? The pharmacist has it ready." Left on read. By the time Thanksgiving arrived, I had ignored 6 texts and missed 12 calls. And my phone buzzed with a message from Daniel on Thanksgiving morning. "Daniel, your disregard for your parents is causing them a great deal of distress. Will you really allow this to continue this far?" My jaw tensed as I gazed at the message. When they informed me that my children were not welcome, it had already gone too far. On this occasion, he did not respond. I turned to my real family and put my phone on silence. Jake was mixing pancake batter at the table with Emma and Caleb. They were laughing hysterically, covered in flour. Now, this was our Thanksgiving, and I felt totally at ease for the first time in years. The accounting I ought to have realized it wouldn't stop there. Due to my parents, they had not yet finished. I would never be able to forgive their next move. For the first time in years, Thanksgiving morning was serene. The children should not be hurried to put on their finest attire. Don't worry about creating the ideal side dish. No frantic checks of the time to make sure we weren't running late. Rather, laughing and the aroma of pancakes and maple syrup filled our house. Jake flipped pancakes with such exaggerated skill that Emma and Caleb laughed every time he nearly dropped one, while they alternated stirring the batter. I felt free for the first time in a long time. My phone then rang. I looked at the display. "Mom." I let the voicemail go. It rang once more after a minute. But then again, Jake gave me a worried glance. "Do you want me to switch it off?" After a moment of hesitation, I shook my head. "No, I should at least know if it's an emergency." With a flat voice, I swiped to respond. "Mom, what is it?" She sighed. Oh, you pick up now. I assume that while we're all here enjoying a delicious dinner, you're just sitting at home, feeling sorry for yourself. I let out a sigh. Mom, I truly don't have time if you called just to boast. I didn't call for that, she yelled. Then she became abrasive. I have a question for you. I squeezed my nasal bridge. Now what? Has the credit card been canceled? All of a sudden, the room felt incredibly still. I lowered my voice and turned away from Jake. What are you discussing? This is your dad's credit card, the one we've been using for necessities like food and gas. This morning, it was rejected. My spine tingled with a gradual, cold awareness. She was referring to a credit card that was not theirs. I owned it. I had added them as authorized users on my account years ago when Dad was recuperating from surgery and money was scarce. In the short term, merely to get them through a difficult time. When they stood up again, I intended to take them off. However, I had forgotten because life became hectic, and I had never been reminded. I tightened my jaw. Are you referring to my credit card? A pause. Then Mom snorted. Oh, Mia, stop being so dramatic. It's only a card. You earn a lot of money, so we thought. What did you figure out? My voice was already trembling. That you would simply continue to spend my money? That I wouldn't be aware of? She yelled. Oh, don't act like this is some big betrayal. We brought you up. Supporting us would be the least you could do. I took a deep breath. I had been the victim of their theft for many years, and they still expected me to look after them in spite of everything they had done. I forced my voice to remain quiet as I closed my eyes. I said, Mom, you're right about one thing. Yes, I canceled the card. And that was just the start. As though I had slapped her, Mom gasped. Mia, don't be ridiculous. You can't just cut us off like this. I laughed sharply, with years of fatigue in my voice. As I said steadily, oh, I can, and I just did. She yelled, You're overreacting, with the same disdain in her voice that I had heard all my life. After everything we've done for you, this is how you treat us? My jaw ached from clenching so tightly. I said again, Everything you've done for me? You mean raising me? The basic responsibility of being parents? The same people who just told me my kids aren't good enough to sit at your table? On the other end, there was stillness. After taking a deep, leisurely breath, Mom's voice became icy. You'll regret this, Mia. She hung up after that. For a second, my entire body shook as I stood there clutching my phone. Feeling sorry? No. My only regret was not taking action sooner. Jake was leaning on the counter with his arms folded, observing me intently. When I turned around, everything okay? I stuffed my phone in my pocket and forced a breath. Yeah, I responded, sounding more composed than I actually was. Just taking out the trash. Pushing off the counter, he nodded. Come on, the kids are waiting. We celebrated Thanksgiving the way it should have been celebrated that evening. With their little hands still sticky from marshmallows and hot cocoa, the kids dozed off on the couch as we watched movies, played board games, and baked cookies. Tension was absent. Don't worry. No need to tread carefully. I felt free for the first time in years. However, I should have realized it wouldn't be that simple. Due to my parents, they had not yet finished. The cost of releasing, they didn't remain silent for very long. My phone flashed with an incoming call 3 days after Thanksgiving. Daniel. I considered ignoring it, but my curiosity won out. With a sharp exhale, I responded, What do you want? What the hell, Mia? He yelled, eschewing polite conversation. Mom just called me in tears saying you cut them off. What is wrong with you? I squeezed the bridge of my nose and closed my eyes. Did she also tell you they've been using my credit card for years without my knowledge? A pause. Well, Daniel said at the beginning, his tone measured. She said you were helping them out. I laughed without humor. Helping them out? Daniel. They racked up thousands of dollars on my account without asking. Meanwhile, they treat my kids like garbage. But sure, let's act like I'm the villain here. He let out a sigh, obviously struggling to contain his annoyance. Look, I get that you're mad, but cutting them off completely? That's extreme. You mean like how they completely excluded my children from Thanksgiving? I replied. They just wanted a peaceful evening, Mia. Mom said your kids can be a little wild. I gripped the phone more tightly. Crazy. This was all about that. My children weren't good enough because they were crazy. But my cash? It was all right. Free labor on my part? It was all right. Something inside of me snapped. Oh, I see, I responded in a stern, sluggish voice. So they can use my money, but my kids aren't good enough for their table. Got it. Daniel let out a frustrated grunt. You're twisting this. No, Daniel, I answered in a remarkably composed tone. I'm finally seeing it for what it is. A long pause ensued. Then he became calculated in his voice. Look, maybe we can work something out, he replied. What if you just kept helping them but set limits? Like a smaller monthly transfer? That way no one has to suffer over a misunderstanding. I blinked. I chuckled. Let me clarify. After stealing from me for years and kicking my kids out of a family get-together, they wanted me to continue sending them money without saying sorry? Still giggling, I questioned, you really think I'd keep paying them after they told me they love your kids more than mine? They didn't mean it like that, complained Daniel. They said it, I instantly retorted. Quiet. At last, his voice became rigid. Fine. If you want to be selfish, that's on you. But don't expect Mom and Dad to forgive you anytime soon. I shook my head and grinned. I'll survive. I hung up after that. My parents engaged in their favorite game, the silent treatment, over the following 3 weeks. No phone calls. Don't text. I assumed they wanted me to give in, that, as usual, I would have returned stumbling back, begging for their acceptance. They were unaware, however, that I no longer needed it for the first time in my life. I thought they had finally given up, but then they made one final desperate move. I never owed this debt. When the letter arrived, it was the week before Christmas. Jake read the sender's name with a furrowed brow after finding it in the mailbox. It's from your parents. I tensed up. Oh, great. Let me guess. Guilt? Manipulation? Straight up gaslighting? He grinned. Why don't we find out? With a knot in my gut, I accepted the letter and opened it. A formal legal paper was within. As I read the lines, my breath caught. They were requesting payment for years of financial and emotional assistance. I chuckled incredulously. You've got to be kidding me. Jake swiftly glanced at the letter as he grabbed it from me. He clenched his jaw. They're saying you owe them for raising you, for all the sacrifices they made. When I glanced at the bottom of the page, I saw it. $78,542. In fact, they had given my childhood a monetary value. It seems that expenses for things like food, clothing, school supplies, and medical care things that typical parents give out of love were now debts that needed to be paid back. With a sneer, Jake tossed the paper on the counter. They must be desperate. With a slow breath, I let out my rage. It had nothing to do with money. Control was at issue here. One last desperate effort to yank me back into their clutches. I had already made up my mind when I looked at Jake. I think it's time I pay them a little visit. I clutched the letter tightly as I traveled to my parents' house the following day. Mom's face stiffened instantly as she opened the door. Oh, so now you show up? I didn't fall for it. I displayed the letter. You seriously thought this would work? She crossed her arms. It's what's fair. I gave a harsh chuckle. Fair? You want to charge me for being your child while expecting free money from me for the rest of your lives? Dad popped up in the doorway looking smug. We sacrificed a lot for you, Mia. And now you're abandoning us. I shook my head and glanced at them. No, Dad. You abandoned me when you made it clear my kids weren't good enough. When you stole from me? When you put a price tag on my worth? Mom's mouth formed a thin line. If you don't want to pay, then I guess we'll have to involve lawyers. I grinned. A slow, icy grin. Go ahead. She blinked. What? I folded my arms. Take me to court. Try to explain to a judge why you're suing your own daughter for expenses from 20 years ago. See how that goes. They appeared uncertain for the first time. Dad cleared his throat. We just thought you'd want to make things right. I chuckled. Oh, I am. I tore the letter in two and dropped the fragments at their feet. I turned and left after that. I was in control for the first time in my life, and I had no intention of returning it. I left that residence without turning around. Ignored my mother, who was standing in the doorway with her hands clenched. Ignored my father, with his arms folded and his face contorted in a show of entitlement. ignored the ripped fragments of their absurd letter that were lying at their feet. I simply strolled, and I took a deep, steady breath and clutched the wheel when I got inside my car. It was done! Or so I believed. A never being family, my parents were silent for 2 weeks. I ought to have been more aware. The messages began 2 days before Christmas. Mom, this is absurd, Mia. We are related. You don't abandon your family because of a pointless quarrel. Left on read. Another day later. Mom, you're forgiven. We'll forget this ever occurred when you join us for Christmas dinner. It nearly made me chuckle. Do they pardon me? Then one from Daniel a couple of hours later. Daniel, Mia, they're in a lot of pain. Please apologize so that we can proceed. I gave an eye roll. Of course, I was the guilty party in his universe. Me, it's funny. When they were robbing me, they weren't in pain. Or when I was informed that my children were not welcome. I believe they will live. I sent it. I immediately blocked his number after that. A surprise for Christmas, it was the ideal Christmas Eve. Jake and I had just finished arranging the tree, and the living room was softly shadowed by the warm glow of the lights. Caleb and Emma were already counting down the hours until morning while dancing enthusiastically in their pajamas. Don't worry, no stress. Only us. Then ding dong. Jake and I looked at each other. Never, he whispered. My stomach was already turning as I made my way to the door. Through the peephole, they looked. Indeed, Mom, Dad, Daniel, Claire. A surprise attack. Already tired, I sighed. I thought about ignoring them and letting them freeze in place while they performed whatever trick they were planning. Then I saw what they had in their hands. A huge, elegantly packaged package. I scowled. What was this? A guilt present at the last minute? A bribe? I crossed my arms and opened the door. What are you looking for? Mom's face brightened with phony happiness. Happy Christmas, my love. Expectantly, Dad held out the gift. For the children. I remained motionless. Thanks, but no, Mom's grin faltered. Don't be obstinate, Mia. Let's not let this destroy Christmas. I exhaled slowly and without humor. Christmas has already been wrecked by you. You did it as soon as you informed me that my kids weren't suitable for your table. Her jaw dropped, closed after that. Dad shook his head and moaned. Mia, hurry up. Let's simply reunite as a family. Heart icy, I gazed at them. You're not interested in becoming a family. You want me to resume my usefulness. All I needed to know was that they were silent. I gave a head shake. Go with your gift. Mom's face became stern. Don't be self-centered, Mia. Consider the kids. I gave a harsh, slow smile. The children are on my mind. You are no longer in their lives for precisely that reason. Dad's mouth clenched. Are you serious about doing this? I let out a breath. I did that already. I then slammed the door in their faces. A Christmas that at last made a difference. We had the most wonderful Christmas ever that evening. As Emma and Caleb opened their gifts, the home echoed with their laughter. Before they fell asleep, safe and warm in our arms, we cuddled on the couch, watched movies, played board games, and drank hot cocoa. And Christmas wasn't about pleasing other people for the first time. I wasn't trying to prove myself. It wasn't about attempting to win love that never existed. We were the focus, actual family, selected family. That is, the sort without restrictions, the type that doesn't require you to earn affection. That type of person who loves you because they want to, not because they want something from you. That seemed to be the end of it. That my parents would finally recognize that I was done after I was rejected at my front door, humiliated at Christmas, and cut off financially. However, I didn't realize how much power they believed they still had over me. Since it's New Year's Eve, they did something that surprised me. The last desperation act. It was intended to be a new beginning on New Year's Eve, a night to move on from the past and into a more promising future. As I arranged the snack table and music and laughter filled our house, I told myself that, running around in their tiny party hats, Emma and Caleb were giddy with anticipation as they counted down the minutes till midnight. Jake smiled easily as he poured a glass of champagne for each of us. To a year free of drama. I clinked my glass against his and smiled. At last. Then there's a knock. I went cold. Jake looked directly into my eyes. You believe? I was aware beforehand. I inhaled deeply, moved over to the door and pushed it open. And there they were: Mom, Dad, Daniel, Claire. They were all of them. And I knew this wasn't simply another guilt trip as soon as I saw the expressions on their faces. There was more to this. I folded my arms. Now, what do you want? Mom smiled at me. The same phony, sugary, sweet smile. All we want to do is talk. I remained motionless. Thanks, but no. Dad let out a sigh. Enough, Mia. Your point has been made. Let's address this now before it gets out of hand. I squinted. Too far? Even so, what does that mean? Daniel and Mom looked at each other. Then, as if he had been mistreated, Daniel moved forward with his arms folded. A lawyer has been speaking with Mom and Dad. I felt a chilling feeling of fear come over me slowly. A lawyer? I said it again. Mom nodded, something glimmering in her eyes that made my stomach turn. Mia, we're just worried. Due to a careless mistake, you have severed your children's ties to their biological family. It is unfair to them. My heart raced. What are you trying to say? I asked in a strained voice. Dad cleared his throat. We have been investigating the rights of grandparents. The sound of the blood rushing in my ears was all I could hear for a time. Then I burst out laughing. It wasn't a little giggle. It was noisy, sharp, nearly insane. Daniel frowned. What's so amusing? I continued to giggle as I wiped my eyes. Oh, you mean it. Do you really believe that a court will rule in your favor? Mom's mouth pushed shut. We haven't done anything improper. Is everything okay? I said it again. I moved ahead slowly. I was robbed by you. My children were treated as though they were beneath you. And you believe you can use bullying to regain access to my life now that I've finally cut you off? Dad's expression hardened. Mia, you don't want to do this. I grinned. A slow, icy grin. Oh, but I do. I took my phone out. Held it up. I calmly said, I want you to think very carefully about what you're about to do, because I have all of the voicemails, texts, and financial demands. And if you give this a try, I guarantee it. I took a step closer. I'll bury you. Sophie gave a start. Come on, Mia, no, I said, staring at my parents. You don't have a case. You are aware of it. And if I'm pushed? I whispered as I leaned closer. I'll see to it that everyone you know knows who you truly are. A thick quiet. Then Mom's angry face contorted. You're acting irrationally. I grinned. No, Mother. I'm being intelligent at last. I then slammed the door in their faces. I stood there for a long time with my heart thumping in my chest as the door snapped shut. I didn't care that I could hear them shifting and muttering on the other side. Everything the first needed to say was said. A few seconds went by. Then I heard sluggish, heavy, retreating footsteps. Then there was quiet. I let out a breath. It was finished. They were finished. The quietness that was vital. I didn't expect to see my mother's name on my phone when I woke up for the first time in years. No phone calls, don't text, no expressions of love that are cloaked in guilt. Nothing. They had vanished. And it was so satisfying. The new year passed in a calm and pleasant manner. Not a drama. Don't worry. It was just my family, the actual family, enjoying a toast to a new year without them while counting down to midnight together and laughing. Jake put his arm around me and planted a kiss on my temple. Feels different this year, doesn't it? As Emma and Caleb spun around the living room in their jammies, yelling 10, I nodded. 9, 8, yes! It was liberating. A life without the months went by. Warm and gentle, spring spread out before us like a fresh start. Nobody made an attempt to call. Nobody made an attempt to arrive. No more games. I initially believed it to be a ruse. They were anticipating my break, to return like I always have, creeping. However, I didn't. Because I finally grasped something. I had been chasing something that would never come to pass for my entire life. My family had never truly wanted me, so I had spent years trying to fit in. I discovered their love had always been conditional after twisting myself into someone quieter, smaller, and easier to adore. What about after I quit playing their game? Their strength was gone. They were defeated. The final word I didn't hear from them again until 6 months later. An electronic mail from my mom. Subject. We're all set to speak. My finger lingered over the screen while I gazed at it for a while. Then I opened it at last. Mia, we want to go on after considering everything that has transpired. If you're prepared to do the same, we're willing to move on from the past. You are missed. The children are missed. Before it's too late, let's make this right. Love, Mom, I read it twice. Then again, to give the arrogance time to register. Were they prepared to move on from the past? Were they willing? With a gentle smile spreading across my face, I shook my head. I didn't even have to consider it. I pressed the erase button. I then banned their email for the first time in my life. It was over in an instant. This time, for real. A distinct family type Jake gave me a lemonade and sat next to me one evening when I was sitting on the porch watching the children chase bubbles in the yard. It's been quiet, he whispered. I gave a nod. Yeah, feels good. He grinned. Think they'll ever try again? As I sipped my drink, I watched Emma and Caleb burst the bubbles and let the wind carry their laughing. I answered, doesn't matter, at last. As they were no longer my family. My family was this. My children, my spouse, those that genuinely cared about me, those who did not require me to earn their affection, the folks who, like me, wanted me in their life. The sun was warm against my skin as I grinned. I had waited for them to change all my life. And now? I now understood that the only thing I had ever had to do was walked away. And I had never felt lighter in my life.